One of the joys of the science fiction genre is the sociological element, because by nature, the genre is an exploration of human behavior in a theoretical situation. If humans had begun colonizing space, then how would the biological differences between people born with weaker bones and hearts due to the weaker gravity affect the development of cultural and social identities?
You wish to hurt Earth. The Earth that is now crushing your weak belter lungs and your fragile belter bones.
What would the political situation be like between an economically declining Earth and a growing Mars? These are the big questions about the individual social structures and the identity it produces that The Expanse asks and explores. It's a show that is both incredibly well informed and earnest with its subject matter, because it never turns the story into an argument, but it has the convictions to remain as an exploration first. There are no true heroes or villains, only competing points of views, because everyone are simply characters with concrete motivations in a universe that is reactive to their consequences. So the purpose of this essay is to explore how the show connects its various ideas and concepts together to paint an image, and to also, ramble on.
Getting shown the road?
Some things in life are worth waiting for.
Who is she?
Well, she's just a missing persons case. Not permitted to discuss.
In the beginning of The Expanse, we see Julie Mao floating inside the scopuli, and immediately we're introduced to three hostile social actors. Humans, space itself, and then the protomolecule, this unknown blue substance that has covered the core of the ship. This whole sequence puts on an emphasis on fear, so these three factors are presented as being tense and highly reactive. So in this one image, the key themes of The Expanse is established: identity, power, and technology. And the dominant two storyline ends up dividing the themes up between them.
You guys look like shit.
Holden's storyline is arguably the main storyline because he pushes it along the most dramatically. The first season adapts the first 2/3 of the book, Leviathan Wakes, which on one hand could be because the climax is so special effects heavy that it wouldn't fit into a single season's budget, but it's also because the show, more than the book, is about the processes more than the results or the destination. And this is obvious in the subtle changes and additions made in Holden's journey.
If your girlfriend logged that distress call, she's gonna be living it down for a long time.
I did it.
In the show, Holden obliges the crew to become involved in responding to the scopuli, and this is highlighted as being something deeply controversial.
That distress call we never received. It was logged with HQ by some anonymous piece of shit do-gooder aboard this ship.
Somebody has a soul.
Whereas in the book, he just sort of insists, and the captain is okay with it. So this ends up making the death of the Canterbury crew precisely related to Holden's blind, altruistic morals. Therefore, a gap is immediately established. His morals are not representative of the story's themes because the narrative is actually more interested in examining how people project meaning into the unknown and how deeply chaotic this process is. This is further spotlighted when a Martian vessel approaches the survivors, and as an act of blind self-defense, Holden broadcasts his theory that the whole event was orchestrated by the Martian Navy.
Our ship was destroyed answering a bogus SOS from a ship called the Scopuli. We recovered a false beacon and identified it as Martian naval technology. It was a trap.
Are you insane?
We're about to be taken aboard the MCR.
In his eyes, he's pushing the perpetrators into the light, but in reality, it only creates further social divisions between belters, which are the people born in space, and people from the inner planets. because now everyone believes it's another instance of Belters being bullied. Blind communication and morality has consequences because it harvests the irrationality of people, and we see this from how information turn into campaigns and then social forces in its own right. But Holden isn't an idiot. His good intentions is still his biggest strength, because in a universe that is deeply politically polarized, his determined pursuit to be impartial is what makes him a beam of light.
Earth and Mars have been stepping on the necks of the Belters out here for over 100 years, and I didn't want to be the boot.
So you decided to switch sides.
I stopped playing.
And to highlight this, the show brings in Christian Avasarala, who was originally introduced in the second book, but is now brought in earlier to further contextualize the consequences of Holden's decisions while also helping to establish the wider context of the story. Through her eyes, we confidently understand that he's important because he's dependable.
He grew up thinking he was alive because the land needed him. That's a terrible thing to tell a child. We set him up to be a leader, and then gave him a fight he could never win.
The other half of the story is focused on Detective Miller, the officer tasked with finding Julie Mao, and if Holden's story was about a blind dialogue between a man and the unknown, Miller is a love story about a man being provided meaning from precisely the unknown.
Detective Miller. You're in love with Julie Mao.
These are characters that are motivated by opposing values. Where Holden has an optimism about people, Miller is deeply cynical, and they function as the weighing scales of the story. Very subtly, as Holden gets more and more punished, he loses a lot of his innocence.
What's happening? This is a death sentence.
Yeah.
Holden?
But Miller develops that attitude the more he learns about Julie Mao. Her story as a girl from a privileged background leaving her wealth to live on the difficult world of the Belters directly contradicts Miller's misanthropy so badly that he ends up being assimilated by this new worldview.
Show me my replies.
Show me my replies. You're so blind and so condescending, and you're never gonna change. If you won't take yourself seriously as an adult, then why should I care about being your child?
One of the small but poignant scenes is Miller going through Julie's messages and seeing how the data trail creates an identity. In the book, it was from the different drafts of an email reply, but the point is still the same. An identity is imprinted in the use of technology and is then imprinted into Miller. Even when he loses his job as a detective, he continues on his search for Julie Mao, so there's a reversal between characters. Where Holden is someone who's constantly projecting meaning, Miller is provided that. He's on the other end of the transaction. Both characters look at the same thing, but at two different angles, and therefore processes the same mystery differently. Julie gives a face to the unknown, and that produces intimacy, and that eases the tensions between forces. Holden and the Rocinante crew explores power, Miller explores identity, and both converge over the looming presence of technology as an agent of change on its own. And that's through the protomolecule. The protomolecule is a catalyst for change, something that keeps moving the boundaries of what is understood.
So why don't we just figure out...
What are you doing following Julie?
We didn't know who we were looking for.
We're thugs back at the hotel.
We don't know.
Goddamn thing you do know?
Which eventually becomes a socio-political process in the later seasons, but right now it's just simply a means to manipulate the existential context of all the characters and move them all into the unknown again. When studying the effects of technology on society, there tends to be three dimensions. The first is the technology itself, like phones and whatnot, or spaceships and hand terminals in this case. The second are the cultures that are formulated around it, like traditions and social norms.
You wouldn't need a prosthetic. It regrows the limb perfectly.
Screw the innards in their magic jello.
No offense, Holden.
No, I'd rather a Belter-built fake any day.
Because you're stubborn.
In this case, it's stuff like the Belter language or Martian patriotism. The final are the social contexts, such as who has access and who doesn't, because people have to construct their habits and infrastructures on what is possible with technology.
You know what I love most about Mars? They still dream. We gave up. They're an entire culture dedicated to a common goal, working together as one to turn a lifeless rock into a garden.
The mystery up to this point was produced by a tense relationship between people and technology, from systems of communications to the culture molded by the limitations of space, but now there are simply no answers. Holden doesn't find the perpetrators behind the destruction of the Canterbury, Miller doesn't find Julie alive, and the protomolecule consumes technology and people alike indiscriminately.
Oh, God.
There's no means of negotiating or adapting to its destruction. The protomolecule is used as a narrative tool to take away context. And this is the big climax of Season 1. It's not a big set piece where the characters have to stop arrows from hitting Earth like in the book, but instead the big final set piece is the escape from arrows.
You don't think I'll shoot?
The characters are deeply powerless, but the one thing that saves Holden and Miller from dying of radiation security guards in the protomolecule itself is simply faith. The hope that the Rosnate crew were willing to wait for them. The season bookends itself in a way that the book doesn't. The story properly begun with Holden unwilling to compromise his morals in the face of social pressures, and the story ends in the same way.
All right? Everybody that I give a damn about is on this station, including Miller, and they're all either dead or dying. So if we stick around here, we run the risk of getting killed.
He's right.
We owe Holden.
I don't listen to a goddamn thing.
Amos and Naomi are willing to do the same, but this time their faith is rewarded. The outcome of this commitment towards morals is inconsistent, but it's the only action that is dependable in a chaotic universe devoid of recognizable context. And that's the thread that the show uses to connect technology, identity, and power. The impact of narratives, being able to position the self relative to an agreed set of values, very much is the infrastructure that keeps people together. It's what started the story, it's what gave Miller hope, and it's what saves everyone in the end. Season 1 of The Expanse is a bit rough in places compared to the later seasons, but still an amazing show and everyone needs to watch it.